All right. Good afternoon. How's that, okay? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Still a few folks filing in, but figure we should get started. Well, I won't make the joke I was about to make. But we will be on time for this session. I'll just leave it at that. So welcome. This is the next step in customer care, customer collaboration. This is in the Executive Insight track. So my name is Ross Daniels. I am Director of Solutions Marketing at Cisco. I cover our customer care portfolio as well as our unified communications, which is phone systems and voicemail, conferencing, mobile solutions. But this session is going to be primarily related to customer service. Being in the Executive Insight track and counter to what many people would think of as a Cisco presentation, we will not go into deep protocol level networking. I know hardly anything about networking. So if you're looking for that, this is not the session for you. If you are looking for a session that's going to talk about sort of where we see customer care moving in the future, good, that's a good place to be. Traditional and non-traditional channels of customer care, yep, right place. How traditional contact center channels integrate with some of the emerging channels through the Service Cloud. Yep, that's a good place. So if you're still sitting, that's good. You're in the right place. All right, now we're officially on the clock. So we're gonna go 50-ish minutes of discussion or presentation, and I have a short demonstration that I'll show as well. We'll leave a few minutes for questions at the end. If there is an acronym or something that I use that you are really puzzling over in the middle of it, you don't have to wait for the end for that kind of question. But if you can otherwise hold questions for the end, that would be good. Is there something wrong with the audio? We're good?
Just wanted to point this out. Questions.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Thanks. Okay. Yes, there's a mic there for questions in the middle. So just to get a sense of who we have in the audience, by show of hands, who has some sort of line of business or otherwise supervisory relationship to a call center? All right. That's good. People know what an ACD is. Okay, that's still okay. People know that Cisco is actually in the contact center space. Some, okay, that's good. A good start, excellent. So yeah, I mean, Cisco's actually been in the contact center business for about 10 years. We made a couple of acquisitions back in 1999 that really started our journey in customer care. It's interesting, you know, the pieces of customer care that we provide today are you know, software-based routing tools, call routing tools, ACD tools, and IVR, interactive voice response systems. You know, we support sort of, if you remember Mark's keynote yesterday as he was introducing the Service Cloud, kind of all the old stuff that you know, traditional means of customer care, which clearly are still very important today. But if left on their own, without sort of a nod to an integration with the emerging channels, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, the traditional contact center or customer care will not survive. So we'll talk a bit about that as we go here. Before we get started, everyone has their disclaimer. I'm speaking a bit future-looking on some of these things, so things may not be available either when I say they will be, if I say at all, or they may not ever be available. So, well, that's just too bad. So we're going to talk about what we see as very much a market in transition. And this maps very well to what Mark talked about yesterday, that, you know, contact centers have been kind of the lifeblood of customer service for 25, 30 years now. 30, 35 years. I've been in this business too long. So when I started, it was like 20, 25, and now it's 30, 35. Anyway, to something that we call customer collaboration. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means, what collaboration means to Cisco, and again, what we think it means to customers and customer care. We'll introduce a new solution that we have with Salesforce.com called the Customer Interaction Cloud. And then, as I said, I'll run through a short demonstration talking about some of these customer collaboration elements. And we'll have time for questions. I'm hoping that you'll walk away with some semblance of these things. Number one, that customer care is changing, and that the things that we're talking about truly are disruptive to this market. And so it was, I don't know, a little more than half the room, I'd say, said that they had some sort of relationship with the contact center. This is a turning point, and contact centers can embrace the change and the disruption that we see happening here, or risk really being marginalized, or in some cases further marginalized. Contact center, I think, has gained foothold over the last several years, much more important to the executive office, executive visibility, the importance of customer care, especially in a difficult economy. Keeping your existing customers is vital. I will talk a bit about that as well. But contact centers are also slow moving. Folks who, if you're on the business side and you talk to some of your technical counterparts about, wanting to make a change, that can be difficult. So we recognize that. Again, we're in this business. We understand some of those challenges. But I'm going to sort of try to exhort the crowd, as I do when I do these kinds of talks, to really think about how the contact center can change from its traditional role of sort of bring them in, churn them out in terms of contacts, to something that's much more beneficial and much more strategic to the organization. And then lastly, that you recognize that that this new offer, the Cisco and Salesforce.com Customer Interaction Cloud, rolls right off the tongue, is really sort of a key step in customer collaboration, or towards customer collaboration. Okay, so we start again with for the half of people who didn't know what an ACD is or have a direct relationship to contact centers, with some basics, right? So in call centers today, there's a telephony system, right? This is a specialized system. It's called an automatic call distributor. Set up call center agents or customer service reps in skill groups, and when calls come in, you try to match the caller to the right agent with the right skill group. Okay, easy enough. These specialized systems do menuing, right? There's one for sales, two for service, that kind of thing. They queue calls, because in most call centers they are staffed so that you have more calls coming in than agents to handle them. In other words, a little bit of wait time is okay and in fact encouraged. Otherwise, you have agents sitting there with nothing to do, and that gets expensive very quickly. They also do speech recognition. All these things are sort of built into the telephony system or the ACD system. And again, on the other end, you have a customer who gets what they need, hopefully. Now, in reality, by show of hands, who loves calling a call center? Right. So that's a problem, and one big piece of this customer collaboration disruption that we see is pretty much you'd rather do almost anything to answer a question or solve a problem than pick up the phone and dial an 800 number. Okay, so we sort of leave that off to the side for now. We'll come back to that. Looking back internal to the enterprise, right, so we have customers who don't really like the system, so now we'll talk about the people who actually manage these systems. They're not the easiest things to operate. And I say this as a proud supplier of these kinds of systems. They've gotten better. They are simpler than they were 20 years ago or 10 years ago. But implementation of a contact center can be, again, depending on complexity, certainly several months in terms of, for a large-scale contact center. But even, on a minor scale, you're still talking a, several week endeavor to get it right. Get your call routing rules set up properly, set up your agent skills properly. Maintenance can be difficult or sometimes expensive, again, especially some of the older systems. And upgrades, not even so much that they're difficult, which they can be, but any sort of a disruption in the call center is really dangerous, right? Especially people running 24/7 operations. A 5-minute outage is a big deal, and we need to take the system offline for an hour to upgrade it is a really big deal. So you have all of these elements kind of rolling in here, and in the meantime, as the IDC numbers show, people spend a real lot of money on these systems. So we have all of that as kind of background. Now, as we look forward, we see that despite those foibles, and they are very real, the contact center is very important. I mean, billions of calls pour into call centers every year. I looked at one point to try to get some sort of an analyst estimate for the number of calls, and no one even would hazard a guess. But it's well into the billions of calls that make it into call centers, who also, by the way, handle inbound text chats, inbound emails, anything that sort of is synchronous or asynchronous, inbound service. They also do outbound calls, right? Everyone loves telemarketing calls and other sort of outbound calls, so the contact centers do that. I'm not real popular at parties when I talk about what I do. I'm like, oh, you know those systems where you have to press 1 for sales, 2 for service? Yeah, I do that. And, when you get interrupted in the middle of dinner, yeah, we do that too. So despite some of those pitfalls, the contact center remains very, very important. It is by far where the bulk of transactions happen today. And most of them are, good. You might have to wait a few minutes. You might have to bounce around a little bit. But for the most part, customer service is okay. We found one of our partners, Dimension Data, does an annual benchmarking survey. And they found that the general service level on a global basis, sort of satisfaction with customer care, is around 80%. Okay? So that's not great. It's also not great that it's been relatively constant over a 10-year period. So people have invested and bought new stuff and taken on more channels, and the customer satisfaction level is pretty much the same. So that's not great. But it's also not going away. So the question, as I sort of laid it out at the beginning, is how do we bring in some of these other pieces that are sort of emerging and which may offer, in fact, a much better experience to the customer. It's really that is what it should be about, is how do you enhance your brand with customers. So we call this thing customer collaboration, and it basically says you have your existing contact center, and that doesn't go away. You need that. But you need to be able to tie that, because the contact center does a number of things really well. They do process really well. Organization, security, policy, all of these things are kind of motherhood and apple pie good things. How do you apply that to sort of the Wild West of a cloud community, right? Where, unstructured Google searches, people talking about your product or service on Facebook or Twitter. We've seen things happen very much viral. There's a pretty famous YouTube going around about United Breaks Guitars. Has everyone heard of that one? Yeah. So, these things can turn nasty pretty quickly and really be brand damaging, right? I mean, United, decent enough airline, I guess, as far as airlines are concerned, but they take a major public relations hit because they smash up this guy's guitar. And, 5 years ago, no one would have really known about it. But now, today, I don't know, 5, 10 million people have viewed that video on YouTube at this point? Okay. So understanding what's happening with your brand becomes very important. Tying in experts from your organization who don't work in the contact center becomes very important. This one is interesting. The industry's done a good job of automating a lot of things around customer care. And again, the last thing that most people want to do is call a call center. So a lot of web self-help out there today. We've done a pretty good job of doing even voice-based self-help, try to get your answer without actually talking to a person. That means that when a call actually reaches a customer service agent, it's not going to be the easy call, the easy transaction. It's going to be more complicated. Well, what does this mean? This means you got to train them better. So, okay, that's one part. But you also have to give them an out, right? Give them an opportunity somewhere else to go with that call. That's not just sort of a hold, please, and then they start scrambling through like sticky notes of people who helped them 3 weeks ago, or flipping through a paper directory of someone in accounting who can maybe answer this question. So tying into enterprise experts is something that we can now do more systematically. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. Tying other customers in. Again, communities of customers. I think nirvana in this space, quite frankly, is this sort of amorphous community where customers are helping other customers, and this whole bottom piece kind of falls away. That's ideal, and it's not going to happen anytime in our lifetime. But I think that where we can bring other customers into the conversation, say through communities and things like that, can be a good thing. And then tying together business partners as well, right? The sort of the classic example is, I run an airline, but I have a real strong relationship with a rental car company. So we want to tie those things together in terms of providing good service. Or I run an airline and have a good relationship with a corporate travel department that outsources to Amex Travel, for example. So that if I lose my luggage and I call the airline can find where my luggage is, but they don't know the hotel that I'm staying at. But their business partner does, the travel agency does. So maybe if they're tied together, the customer service rep for the airline can tie into that travel agent and say, okay, we know where your bag is, it's on the next flight, and we're going to deliver it to the Hilton because we know that's where you're staying because we talked to your travel agent. Oh, that starts to get interesting. So a little bit about collaboration. So collaboration, let's break it down. Co-labor, work together. Okay? There are myriad definitions of collaboration in the market from a technology point of view, right? If your Microsoft, collaboration means email and SharePoint. If your Cisco, collaboration means voice and video. If your Facebook, collaboration means Facebook. If you're Salesforce.com, collaboration sounds like it's going to mean chatter. That's pretty interesting. But at the heart of it is working together. And when we think about collaboration today, we see collaboration, especially with global workforce, highly dispersed, lean resources, all of these sort of macro trends that are happening. It becomes very important to focus in on a few different areas, right? And if you hit well on these, you'll have good business productivity, and that'll kind of take you forward, which is good. So we sort of laid out these 5 pillars around collaboration. They're fairly self-evident. Obviously, customer intimacy is one that I have particular affinity for. But you can actually apply really any of these to the contact center or customer care environment. Cost reduction, the economics of contact centers work. Right? If you're able to, for example, shave a few seconds off of every call, right? More efficient call handling, and multiply it by 1 million calls a year, that saves a lot of money. How do you actually save that money? Well, you take the same number of calls with fewer agents. Bad news for the agents who lose their job, but those are call center economics. Or you take more contacts in with the same number of people. That's good economics as well. That ties, again, for contact centers very closely to employee productivity, right? The more that agents can do, the more productive, the easier time that they have, the more business value that you see. Customer intimacy, again, probably the most sort of self-evident there, but building a relationship with the customer that goes beyond just handling the transaction. Now, we see this most often in sort of platinum gold type of segmentation of customers. That's good. It's very good. Any company that's not doing some element of that is way behind, frankly. But again, especially in an economic environment where things are challenging, taking that extra, going down to the next level of customers, where maybe it's even you don't know much about the customer, but you would maybe like to, and treating it as more of an interaction than a transaction becomes important. Competitive differentiation, we see a small percentage of contact centers really leading with service as a differentiator. And it can be extremely powerful. I'll give a personal example here. I travel for work. I travel with my family as well. My extended family is sort of dispersed across most of the U.S. I live in Boston. My mother lives in L.A., for example. So we were out for a visit last year. My wife and I have two small children. They're 8 and 6 now. So we're out there, we spend the week, and we're coming home. So we're flying LA to Boston with 2 small children. I'm just trying to paint a picture here. And it's the early morning flight. It's like the 8 a.m. flight, maybe earlier, 7 a.m. And so we have to get up around 4:35, leave from the valley, get to the airport and all that, and everything takes longer when you're traveling with 2 small children. So we get to the rental car lot, and we're returning the car. And it's still dark out, and the kids are tired, and they're complaining, and it's cold. And does this sound familiar to anybody? It's just me. Well, we must have not looked like we were in very good shape, because I'm like, getting ready to pull all the luggage out and put it on the cart and do the dance across the parking lot to the bus. Always fun. And a guy comes over. He's like, "Back in the car. I'm going to drive you to the airport." So I looked to make sure that he actually worked for the rental car company. And he did. He had the right shirt on. And I said, "Okay, great." So, put all the luggage back in, and he jumps in the driver's seat, and I sit next to him, and we start driving the 5 minutes to the airport. I said, what is this? I rent with you guys all the time with my family. What's going on? He said, well, this was in April, okay, so really at kind of the bottom economically, at least in the U.S. And said, well, we got a memo that came down a couple weeks ago that said, when you're working the lot, if you see someone who looks like they could use a little extra help, just do it. Do exactly what I just did. I said, well, geez, that's great. So, he didn't call it employee empowerment, but that's exactly what it was. It created, obviously, a very lasting memory for me. This is a company that cares about service, that fosters customer intimacy, and that uses service as a differentiator. It's nothing to do with the call center, obviously, but you would imagine that service mentality probably carries over to how they handle customers on the telephone as well. I purposefully don't say the name of the company when I talk in groups like this. We have lots of good rental car company customers of ours, so I try not to play favorites. But when I tell my friends about it, you bet that I tell them who it is. And the multiplier effect, and again the viral effect. If I update my Facebook status, for example, with a story like that, hey, just had great customer service from XXX. Okay, so I don't have that many friends, but I don't know, a couple hundred people see that, and then maybe they send it on to someone else, or if it's Twitter, they retweet it or whatever. Brand management starts to come into play here in a very positive way. And lastly here on this slide is just around innovation. Contact centers, again, I sort of gave a little dig before saying that they're a little slow to move. That's true, but they're also very innovative in a lot of ways, right? A lot of things that we see coming into the general enterprise, things like instant messaging, for example, the contact center has had for, 5, 10 years, where you're able to chat with other agents or IM with your supervisor. Things like agent state, which tell you, if an agent is available, not available. Those things are now called presence. So you're indicating whether or not you're on a phone call or available for an IM or things like that. So there actually is a lot of innovation that happens in the contact center, but it does sometimes move a little slowly, which is kind of a little bit of a paradox. So that's a little bit about collaboration. I'll go a little bit more quickly through some of these, but we see collaboration today, frankly, being mostly within a company, right? How can I use video conferencing to, cut travel, but still build trusted teams and things like that? We see very much things moving over time toward intercompany collaboration. That means with customers as well. And then again, sort of this nirvana of a boundaryless piece. We see very much collaboration going from beyond sort of standardized work groups to just ad hoc communities. From working with your closest associates to really working with anyone, so being able to find the right expertise. Again, in the customer care, to be able to find the right person anywhere in your enterprise or even at a business partner who can answer a certain customer's question at that time, very powerful. Collaborating, I think we all see this, the 9 to 5 or even 8 to 7 doesn't exist anymore. It's just work whenever you need to. And again, doing much more virtual. And the contact center has embraced this idea probably more than most. Remote workers and things like that, home-based agents, very important in the contact center market, customer care market. Virtual kind of makes sense for folks there, and the incorporation of tools that help that. Video, for example, which is an emerging tool for customer care. We'll talk a little bit more about. Sort of helps bridge that virtual gap. So when we talk about customer collaboration, we sort of see these 5 transitions, let's say, and I have a chart on each, so I'll just sort of flash it here now, but we sort of see things moving from the things on the left to the things on the right. So contact centers today, very much operationally focused, right? Anyone who's involved in contact centers knows that contact center reporting is kind of the lifeblood of the operation. It's how people are measured. It's how people are paid or bonused a lot of times as well. But the measurements are very focused on, again, operations and sort of a standard set of metrics, right? How many calls did I answer, within the first 3 rings is a fairly common metric. Phones don't even actually ring in the contact center anymore, but you get the point. Did I reach my service level? What was my average speed of answer? What was my average time to service? And you have averages and averages and averages. That's okay. It is what it is. But it focuses on all of the efficiency side of contact centers. And I always counterbalance that with the effectiveness side of call centers, right? And you need both. If you're super efficient, that's great, except that you have customers who absolutely hate dealing with you. And you're already dealing with a pretty high bar in terms of customer expectation. If you're super effective, that's good, except that you've blown your efficiency now and you're spending too long on every call, or you have agents who are sitting there with nothing to do while they're waiting for calls to pour in. That's not great either. It's too expensive. So what we want to see is, I'd like to see a balance. If anything, I'd like to see a little bit more weight on the effectiveness side. And that really argues for this idea of moving towards customer intimacy. Well, how do we do that? We use things like video, for example. Video in the contact center is something that's been talked about for a number of years. I always make the point that this doesn't mean the agent talking head, right? Seeing the agent, if I'm a customer, doesn't do much for me. Right? Maybe I get a little bit of empathy, but not much. And as soon as you say video in the contact center supervisors start saying, no, you don't want to see my agents on video. This is not a group of people that we can broadcast. Okay, that's fine. Hair color choices are up to individuals, I think. So, but video to serve up information, absolutely, right? So if I'm at, a wireless phone store, right, a Verizon store, an AT&T store, you go in there and there's 50 people all trying to buy an iPhone or a BlackBerry or whatever. There's 3 people who work in the store and a lot of people milling around and handling the phones and all that. My 8-year-old loves to go in those stores and touch all the phones, and I'm just running over with Purell every 5 seconds. No, stop touching everything. I have a little problem with germs right now. But to put in a video kiosk into that environment where someone can walk up and click a button and actually talk to a person, maybe they start by browsing some video and things like that, but then actually connect to an agent to talk about something, and then for the agent to be able to push video, specific video, about certain phones, certain features, things like that, that's a pretty powerful model. Think of the same thing in financial services, right? If a mortgage loan officer handles 10 banks in a 5-state area, goes branch to branch to branch, that's great if you happen to go into the branch on the day that he's there. If not, you're kind of out of luck and you have to make an appointment, and you know what, maybe I'll just go down the street and see if I can get my mortgage there, or my refi, as the case may be today, or my forgiveness on my loan, or whatever it is. Tie together more of a contact center model, for example, and have a video room in the bank branch and extend the expertise out to more of a virtual pool. So those are the kinds of things that we think about to foster customer intimacy. The second piece is about moving from something that is very reactive to much more proactive. And I'll give an example here around community care, right? So I talked before about if we can get to a model where the community services the customer, that's pretty powerful. Another personal story. So this actually happened. I was making a CD mix for my son's birthday party. It was going to be like the giveaway. So we're making a bunch of American Idol songs, and I was burning them to a CD. So, okay, I actually bought and owned all of these songs in iTunes. I was not pirating. And there, at the time at least, was some sort of a flag where you could only burn a playlist a certain number of times, like 8 times. Well, that's fine, except I got 15 kids coming to this birthday party. So, of course, it's the night before, and of course it's getting late, and I'm trying to burn these CDs, and I hit my 9th one, and it says no. And my wife's like, we should have done this earlier. So, again, hopefully I'm painting a little bit of a picture. What do I do? Well, I'm the kind of guy who is a glutton for punishment, and I pick up the phone and I call Apple. And I wait on hold for 18 minutes, and I finally talk to a person. And Apple's fantastic, love them, great company and all that. And the customer service person was very nice, very pleasant, but basically said, I can't help you. But go check out this, Mac forum. Because the guys there are pretty smart, and I bet you'll find an answer. Basically what she was telling me is there's a way to unlock this thing that's not illegal, but not something that iTunes wants to broadcast. So go to the community, and they'll tell you how to do it. So I did. I went to the community. I found out how to do it. I burned all my CDs, and life was good. So knowing about, the fact just that this agent knew about the community is a great first step. The next piece will be tying that community into the contact center more formally, and we'll get into that in a couple minutes here. The third transition I talked about a little bit already, this idea of going from agents to experts, right? Within Cisco, we do this with technical support, right? We have pretty technical products, and we've moved from sort of triage engineers to calls routing more directly to an expert more quickly, right? This idea that, you know, a call that makes it into the contact center is going to be pretty complex. So you better have someone with good expertise to be able to handle it. The fourth piece we call solicitation to participation. And again, solicitation from a contact center is that call during dinner, right? Are you interested in changing your, long distance plan? These calls still exist despite, do not call lists and caller ID. I mean, it's remarkable that they still do, but they do. And to much more of a participation model, and that doesn't mean, it can mean appointment reminders and things like that. But if we start thinking about being where the customer is, right? Maybe they're in a community and participating with them in that community, that becomes a pretty powerful way to build your brand. So, if I'm really interested in video games and I play Guitar Hero with my kids, then maybe I spend a little bit of time in some sort of a chat room or community talking about Guitar Hero. Well, that's great. What if Nintendo is in that community with me, notices that I'm answering questions and really promoting the games and the Wii and all this, and offers me a $5 off coupon on the next version of Guitar Hero? That's kind of good and participatory, and again, differentiating based on customer service and being where I am. And the last piece is this idea that, if we do this properly, we can actually get to a point when, the call center changes from a cost center to something that is much more of a growth engine for the company. That, rather than just handling calls that come in, it can be something that really enhances the brand and the reputation of the company. One of the I'd say early leaders in social networking and care related to social networking is Comcast, a big cable provider. Not another terrific Cisco customer, but generally speaking, cable providers are not known as being excellent customer service organizations, right? Again, you don't love calling your cable company. But they've really started to differentiate based on how they're doing care on Twitter. So they have an account called Comcast Cares. It's got around 30,000, 35,000 followers right now. And there's, I don't know, about a dozen real live people who are related to the Comcast customer care department who are out there, right? So it's, with their Twitter handles, it's, Comcast Doug or Comcast Bonnie or Comcast Joe. And that's interesting in and of itself because it's putting a real face, maybe not face, but an identity to the people who are providing care. Contrast that with when you call a call center, right? You call a call center and it's this disembodied voice and no connection of any kind versus this much more personal and participatory experience that you might have if you're interacting with Comcast on Twitter. Now, I said 30,000 or so followers. Comcast has, 50 million subscribers. So it's a pretty small slice right now. But they're doing things that most people aren't. And it has impacts in this idea of reputation and brand management. So, for example, last spring, during the hockey playoffs, I think it was Atlanta and Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, there was, people are trying to watch the playoff game, and the broadcast shuts down. And Comcast first hears about it through the Twitter account. Hey, what's going on, and this is Detroit, right? I don't know people who know hockey, but like Detroit is Hockey Town. Is that actually their name? Hockey Town? Anyway, it's a big deal. So if I'm from Detroit and I want to watch this game, listen, I'm in Detroit. It's been a tough couple of years for me. Give me hockey at least. So I start complaining on Comcast. That's where they found out about it first. So what did they do? Well, they started tracking it down. They started tracking it down with sort of the tech support network people, like the people who actually keep the video network up and running, the broadcast network, and determined that it didn't have anything to do with Comcast. It was like some transformer blew out somewhere, and everybody, all the cable providers, DirecTV, anyone who broadcast this game was out. So, okay, so that's number one, at least it's not our fault. But then they were able to let the contact center know, the standard call center, right, that has the 50 million people who might call in, not the 30,000, hey, you're going to start getting calls about this. Here's the story, right? It's a transformer. It's out. The blah, blah, blah is working on it. There you go. So they took this, and then they were, by the way, also able to broadcast out to their Twitter followers that they knew about the problem before they had, thousands of complaints coming in on the Twitter account. So they took what was, clearly a negative, although it wasn't their negative, and turned it around. That's very different from how we think about contact centers today. But it's where contact centers need to go to continue to be relevant in a world where social networking is going to play a huge role in customer care. So that's some background on customer collaboration, on the evolution of contact centers into this idea of customer collaboration, and some key transitions that we see. So we'll transition now into discussion on this solution called the Cisco and Salesforce.com Customer Interaction Cloud, which again we think is sort of a good initial step toward this idea of customer collaboration. So what is it? Typical Cisco contact center today, it's called Cisco Unified Contact Center, is a customer premise solution. And it does all of the good contact center things that it should do. It routes calls, it queues calls, it does skills-based routing, it does reporting, and it does it, with 5 nines of uptime-ish. No, I'm, again, making a little bit of a poke at the keynote this morning. I think that there is some playing with nines. So with the Customer Interaction Cloud, we move that off-prem into a hosted solution, a SaaS-based solution. We combine it with the Service Cloud, and we create the Customer Interaction Cloud. So that's a good thing. Again, a lot of as we talked about in the first couple of slides, a lot of the difficulties around running a contact center application, difficult to maintain, hard to, specialized skill set, all those things, kind of go away a little bit in a cloud-based model, right? And so we're all, at least to some degree, cloud people if we're sitting in this room, right? So we believe in the power of what you can do in a SaaS-based model. And when we do that, we really have a pre-integrated, full contact center solution in the cloud. The agent desktop experience is Salesforce CRM, or the Service Cloud. The contact routing is all the Cisco Unified Contact Center elements. And again, the entire solution is hosted in the cloud. Because it integrates with the Service Cloud, it also delivers against the features there around integrating with social networking, right? So you start to tie in Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, as we've heard about over the last couple of days, the way that the Service Cloud is able to do that. So the initial offer is designed for mid-size contact centers, up to about 300 agents or so. And what is very powerful, so let me talk about the architecture. I'll talk about some of the features and other pieces. So when we think about how we deliver this, architecture usually starts at the bottom. I like to start at the top. What do you want to do, right? You want to be able to handle the phone, chats, emails, tie in the social networking all together with the contact center. So that's sort of the objective of what we want to solve here. So now we'll go to the bottom. The hosted infrastructure is, on the Cisco side, for the call routing infrastructure, is hosted by our partner Teletech. It's an end-to-end Cisco infrastructure. This is about as geeky as any of my slides get. But this is a powerful network of data centers, a powerful data center model with obviously huge uptime and massive investments in redundancy and availability, right? The 7 MPLS networks is really impressive. So with this as kind of the base for the Cisco piece of the solution, you sort of have the base for the hosting piece. And then you layer on top of that all of the functionality, right? So I talked about automatic call distribution, the ACD, right? This is the core call routing that we need to do. CTI, or computer telephony integration, is what integrates sort of the database lookup and all of the customer information to the call, right? So that when a call comes in and the customer is identified maybe through an account number that they've entered into the menuing system, a screen pop will arrive on the agent so that they can immediately begin servicing the customer rather than what's your name, what's your account number, especially if you've already entered it in, which drives people crazy. You don't have, that doesn't have to be. It's only that way because call centers are slow. So that's fully integrated off the bat. Interactive voice response, again, gives you that menuing capability, the ability to accept numeric inputs, for example, account numbers and things like that, as well as the call routing and menuing. Also allows you to do some self-service, right? So if you're trying to get an account balance or something like that, you can have the IVR set to do that. Dialer is for outbound campaigns, again, whether those are sales campaigns or collections or things like that. They could be, fundraising campaigns for a nonprofit, for example. You tie in the workforce management aspect, which is, agent scheduling. Again, some of the reporting pieces would obviously flow in there as well. And then quality assurance, right? Monitoring these calls, doing call recording and capture so that you can actually make sure that your agents are doing a very good job and that their metrics are good. One of the real keys to how we wanted to build this solution was to really abstract out a lot of the challenges that are typical in an enterprise contact center. So make the administration really easy, make the supervisor portal as well as the reporting all right within the Salesforce user interface, right? It's the same interface. I'll show some screenshots of that as well. But make it very easy, for example, to set up a call flow, right? So if a call of this type comes in, under these conditions, you want to route it to this particular agent skill group. Sounds easy enough, and actually the way that, as you'll see graphically, the way that we do it, it is very easy. Doing it in an old-style ACD, specialized skill, specialized scripting, things like that. So we, again, try to simplify all of that with this solution. And then, of course, you layer on top the pieces that Salesforce.com brings into the mix, which is the agent interface, the service cloud, the knowledge base. All of those things are layered on top to, again, achieve what we put forward at the top layer, servicing people across these multiple channels, including the new channels of social networking. From a feature set standpoint, this thing is challenging. This is more like a, anyway. From a feature set standpoint, very robust. I certainly won't go through these in detail. I think you have access to these slides. But sort of the standard infrastructure is going to give all of the call routing options, click to dial functionality, both inbound and outbound. Music while callers are in queue, for example. All these things are important. Some of the self-service pieces that I talked about, self-service from an administration and provisioning point of view. And then you'll see as well there's some add-on options or things that, remember my second slide that said some things are in the future and they may not be available when we say. So the initial package is expected to be available in January. And folks who might be interested in being a beta customer should probably talk to one of the Cisco people this week. That would be really cool. The purchase model is you purchase the Salesforce elements from Salesforce and the Cisco elements from Cisco. And combined pricing is $250 a user per month. So a little bit about the self-provisioning. Again, the philosophy here was really about simplicity within the Salesforce user experience. Very integrated to make it easy to do all of this. So the agent experience with a screen pop, for example, on the left-hand side is where you'd have your telephony controls, right? So how I answer a call, how I put a call on hold, conference, transfer, all of those things are integrated in there. And then all of the screen pop information would be, again, very much in the look and feel that people are expecting from Salesforce. In terms of provisioning, I talked about setting up a call flow. Again, very graphical. We're demoing this live in our booth, by the way, if you want to go through it in a bit more detail. But again, some very simple steps in terms of the type of call, what you want to do with that call, and the steps that you would then take in terms of routing that call to a skill group of agents. And in terms of setting up those agent skill groups, again, that's very simple as well. You have sort of your directory of agents. You want to add them to a particular skill group. You set the skill group and click Add. It's simple enough that I can do it. And again, the contrast here between what we're doing with this solution versus a typical contact center is pretty drastic. It's pretty drastic. Last piece on this part is just around reporting. Again, reporting remains one of the most important pieces of a contact center. We want to bring all of those dashboards and things directly into the supervisor interface, or you might have a cut that is an agent interface. How am I doing against my peer group today? What's my call load look like? Again, because agents are measured and paid on those measurements, they sometimes want a real-time view of how their day is going, right? Am I going to get to eat this week? That's a joke. So a quick demonstration, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions still. If this works, I should just be able to go over here. So let me set the stage here. This is not a demonstration of Customer Interaction Cloud. It's more of a conceptual demonstration of the types of things we can do, or that we will be able to do looking forward, by tying together traditional call center technology and things that are happening in the cloud, for example. So the scenario here is we have a bank. This is a banking demonstration. We start with, as you'll see, the supervisor of this bank, whose name I think is Kate. And Kate sort of starts out her day. Come on, Kate. Oh. Foiled again. Hold on one second. Let's cancel that. Pay no attention to what's happening here. This is exactly how I expected it to go. There we go. So here's Kate. She's coming into the contact center for the day, and she's before she comes in, she's just sort of checking her phone to see what's happening with the contact center. She has a little application to be able to do that, and she gets an alert that says that the call volume already is 5% higher than it should be. That's not good. Poor Kate, she works in the call center and she's off to a tough day. And a second alert that says, and this is actually pretty interesting, there's increased negative activity on the social networks as well, right? So we're not only getting it from our traditional channels of telephone calls, we're also getting a sense that things are happening in social networks that are indicating that we're having some sort of a problem. Oh, and by the way, we're going to tie this into the workforce management application that says, if things continue like this, we're not going to have nearly enough people here to handle this volume of calls by the time we reach 10 o'clock. Okay, so Kate goes in armed with that knowledge and goes to her desk. So now she's on her desk. This has nothing at all to do with customer care, but we think it's such a cool feature. This is we call meeting handoff sometimes, or some people call it dusting. She takes her call, and now that she's or her application, and she just moves it to her PC. And this would be one of those things that may never be available, but we like the idea of it. We can actually do it with an iPhone today. It doesn't quite work like that, but it's pretty close. BlackBerry is a little bit different. Anyway, so she moves the session to her PC, and now she sits down at her desk and says, okay, what's really going on here? So you can see this is sort of her supervisor view. And she says, okay, within this blog, she sees a message about a problem with a login or a PIN problem. And you can see in the top here, and she has this incident alert that she got on her telephone. We can see that the call volumes are going up, and at 2 hours they reach the red zone. Red zone is not good, especially if you're the New England Patriots. So she's starting to get a sense for what's going wrong with the call center. And she says, okay, well, geez, this seems like maybe it's a PIN problem, maybe it's a login problem. Let me check some other sources. Let me see what's happening with the telephone, right? Let me see if we've gotten any calls about this, not just the social network. And so it turns out that they've actually captured a number of customers who had this problem. One of which leaves.
I'm having problems with my PIN. Every time I try to log in, I get an error message.
Okay, good. So now she's starting to get a view that, okay, this is more widespread. This is a big deal. We need to do something about it. And again, it's related to login or PIN, so she's going to click on login. So again, now she's sort of going from a source-based view to a tag-based view, right? And so, this guy Seth is writing a thing on his Facebook page, right? Again, now we're starting to see brand being impacted, right? All Regions Bank is screwing up. I can't log in. This is a real problem. So Kate says, all right, well, now I really got to do something here. Oops, where do I go next here? Sorry about that. There we go. Come on. Oh, right, the incidents for Foster. So she needs to activate a team here around what to do about this incident. So it's pre-populated with a number of different people. She decides, I don't really need the customer service manager. I don't need senior management on this one. Let me activate the team. And pulls everybody together into sort of an instant conference, right? That would be Cisco WebEx that we're showing there. And okay, so now they're having a conference and trying to figure out, exactly what's going on here. There might be a chat in here as well. They're saying, yep, I've heard, problems with this issue. When you have a chance, send me the link to what we need to do about this, what's our standard procedure, and we got to get this done. So they do all that. Now we shift the scene to the customer service agent. This is Natalie. The customer service agent is, trying to do her job, and you can start to see that, there's a few instances of people not able to log in. So that's not great. And again, I talked about agents being able to chat with each other, right? So there's some chatter back and forth between the agents saying, hey, guys, anything going on with this issue? Do you guys know what's going on with the PIN? I've got all these customers. And Kate, again, the supervisor, says, okay, guys, the incident response team is working on it. We're on the case. We should have something updated within the hour to solve this issue. So that's a good thing. Oops. Sorry. There we go. Sorry. Trying to go to the next piece here. There we go. Natalie says, okay, great. We've had a lot of call volume on this. What's going on? So notice that a little time passes, and Kate sends a video around saying, okay, here's what's happening with this issue. You can see the video.
Here's our response to the login PIN lockout.
That doesn't say much. I'm going to cancel it. But we've solved this issue. Here's what we want you to do next. We want you to start, handling calls and things that have come in on the social networks about this problem. So we see that this particular customer, Katie, came in through Facebook, and that's already assigned to an agent. Again, this agent, Natalie, is going to handle Peter's problem here. So she clicks on Peter. Okay, he can't log in. Again, he's not chirping this. We use chirp instead of Twitter. He's not saying this to the bank. He's saying this to his friends on the social network, right? But the bank is able to discern that from the noise of the social network. And, okay, we have a note here as well that, the customer likes actually to be communicated back to in shorthand. And she's able to tweet back or chirp back to the customer, hey, your PIN problem's been solved, or your login will be restored in an hour. So now we get to this idea of customer satisfaction and brand reputation, brand management, and he sends a chirp or a tweet out to all of his networks, said, hey, my bank just found me and fixed my problem, right? He never picked up a telephone, never sent an email to the bank, he just complained to his friends. and the bank solved the problem. And again, you end up with this network effect and this viral effect that turns what was a negative into a positive, right? So that's a little bit of what we see is possible and will be possible going forward. So I'll end with, again, just remind you of some of the takeaways. Customer care is changing. Contact centers have the chance to really change how they're being viewed, and that we think we have a good first step here. In terms of calls to action here, happy to have you come by our booth. There's also a joint Cisco Salesforce.com website called CustomerInteractionCloud.com. A lot of information out there about this solution. There's a number of us here this week as well. And you can also join us in our online community at go/join the conversation. So we have, I think, a couple minutes left if there are any questions. Happy to answer them, and if it gets to something that I can't answer, I've got a couple colleagues I can call on as well. So hope that was informative as well. Yeah, please.
Are you localizing this for use outside the U.S.?
The question is, are we localizing this for outside the U.S.? Ultimately, yes. In the initial instance, it's a North America offer, but it's absolutely our intent to bring this global as well. So again, initial instance due out in January for North America. We would hope sometime in 2010 to be able to roll it out elsewhere, but no firm dates on that just yet. Good question. Please. Sure. Right. Right. So the question is, if I'm just getting started with social networking, do I need to do this, basically? So the $250 a month is all in, right? So it's the call center, it's the agent desktop experience, it's all the licensing from Salesforce, and it's the Service Cloud piece. If you already have a standing contact center, we have a different integration that we can do to Salesforce.com that wouldn't necessarily be hosted. Now, if you have a non-Cisco contact center, then, well, we have to fix that. But, I think the idea here is, if you don't have a call center, this is a nice, neat package, or if you have a call center about to go, belly up, or whatever the case may be, or you really want to get into some of these new things that, the system you have now just can't support, this would be a good way to get into that. Okay? Please, in the back. Yes, the question is the hosting technology multi-tenant. Yes, it is. And that's from our partner, Teletech. Yes. Anything else? Please. For intelligent call centers that serve multiple clients in different industries, yes. How does this work? So like an outsourcer, for example. So we could do that as well. How would this work for, I don't know, how would this work for an outsourcer? Tom, Billum, you have a thought on that? I'm turning on mic B. Well, I'd like you to turn on mic B. Oh, there you go. Well, see, that's easy.
Little tiny switch.
There
Yes,
you go.
of course. How does it work for an outsourcer? So there's many different aspects to that, of course. Branding comes into that as well. So one of the possibilities that we're thinking about rolling out as well is a white labeled version of this, which could then be used by an outsourcer. The multi-tenancy capabilities are already in there. So whether you take one instance or multiple instances, if you will, bring that on the one contract with an outsourcer that can then provide that in their own branded fashion. That is something that we're thinking about. The basic technology is all there. So we can have some further discussions on that if you like.
Okay. Thanks. Any last questions? All right, thanks very much. Hope that it was useful for you. Thanks very much.